Hey RecLess fans, this is Tom here to share some exciting news as we wrap up Season 4. This season was an absolute blast, with a guest list filled with heavy hitters, so be sure to catch up on all the episodes if you haven't done so already. 4 seasons are now in the books, and we want to thank you all for joining us along this incredible journey. Although we are taking a little break from recording, we're excited and busy planning for Season 5 and the upcoming National Recreation and Park Association Conference this September in Orlando, Florida. For those interested, we will be officially releasing sponsorship information after the episode release, which includes opportunities to partner with us at NRPA and during the upcoming Season 5. You can reach out to us with interest or questions at recklesspod@gmail.com. And yes, we will be back for another season soon, but in the meantime, look out for the Season 4 wrap-up show and be sure to follow us on our socials at LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
Welcome to Season 4 of RecLess, the podcast expanding your knowledge and making you smarter about the field of parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, 3 career-long friends from around the country, bringing insights, industry stories, and a surprise guest each episode. Thanks for swinging by. We're glad you're here. This is RecLess.
Yo.
Well, I'm in trouble. It's 2 people.
So I was just talking to them saying it's the first thing they're going to say is something about having multiple guests.
Yeah, it's an intervention. I get it. I've been waiting for this to happen for some time. B. Allen Moondoggy. Or maybe it's Moondoggy B. Allen. Moondoggies B. Allen. Is that some sort of pop culture phrase? Am I just missing it? Like when you say, man, those dogs are barking, you just say Moondoggies B. Allen.
I'm not going to give you any more hints.
Well, you haven't given me any, to be fair.
Well, yeah, but you...
B. Allen. They might have just forgot their name was Bryce Allen.
Yo, do you ever watch The Flash?
No.
So my son loves The Flash. And The Flash main character is Barry Allen.
Barry Allen. I kind of like Moondoggies B. Allen. What's up, man?
All I know is you guys have thought you were convinced all week knowing who the guest was. And now you might be right, but there's 2 guests, not 1.
Yeah. Maybe one's Christine and one's Stratton.
Whatever you say.
I'm about to put this on my bigger screen. We're going 5 wide today, folks.
Wow. There's an extra guest here.
Tom, you're not the only one that can bring in more than 1 guest.
I guess not. I was up until today.
Up until today.
I thought there was a decorum. Apparently, we're in a world of anarchy now. Everyone's just doing whatever the hell they want.
My goal is to always outnumber you guys, so maybe this is my new trend.
I mean, but I had 4 on one, so I guess.
I know, I got to work on that one.
That was anarchy.
Yes, it was.
You guys good?
Yeah. Like having multiple guests on.
Like having multiple guests. Nice little surprise for you today.
Going to get an HR violation.
Okay, well, welcome to the 77th episode of RecLess, a podcast focusing on the industry of park and recreation through 3 close friends in different parts of the country. My name is Jay Tryon. I'm your host today, and I am joined by my other 2 trusty boys here, Shane Mize, Tom Venniro. How's it going, guys?
Good.
Trusty boys.
I was going to say, we're the trusty boys now.
I like it. I'm good, man.
And as you've already pointed out, we have more than 1 guest today. So you have 2 names in front of you that you are trying to guess what that means. But yeah, we got 2 different guests today. So I'm excited about this one. So we got a little topic today that we're going to dive into, and there's a lot of correlation on why. We've talked about it a couple times recently, and Tom and I are on an NRPA campaign for a career choice.
Thanks for the invite.
You might have gotten an invite and either ignored it or just said, no, you're not interested in that. And I don't know the answer to that one. But so just to premise for those that are not in the know of what that is there's a career choice campaign to bring awareness to park and recreation. and all the different career options that are there. And there are a lot of them. And I think that's what's really unique. There's a lot of us that we talk to on a regular basis that are in municipalities. We've had folks that are in the athletic world. We've had, there's nonprofits, there's camps, there's all these different entities that are all different limbs of park and recreation. So my question for you today is, if you could describe your career path in one word, what would it be? And like, we got to stick to one word. I know sometimes we do these and it's not one word, but hey, one word has got to wrap up. And you can elaborate on why, but I want just one word that would describe the career path that you have taken.
I would say unexpected.
Okay.
I don't think at any point pre-career, and probably even the first, I don't know, 15 years in my career, did I think I'd be a director, one. And there were times in my first couple years in Fort Worth that I was still actively applying and interviewing for jobs. I'd interviewed at the University of Mizzou and McMurray to get back into coaching and recreation athletics. And Lauren Schrum in Shirts, Texas, every time she sees me, always laughs at me because she'll see me in a t-shirt and pants normally, but she'll be like, here was the guy in the cutoff hoodie with the long beard and cargo shorts that used to say he was never going to be a director, and look at him now, he's a director, always busting my chops about it. So yeah, I think it's been a wild, unexpected ride that I'm enjoying.
Tom, what do you think?
Unexpected's good. I could relate.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. For you, I was going to say I wouldn't expect you to be. Oh boy, this is a good question. It's a tough one. I would.
Because you want to give two words. I know you do.
I do. I want to have
At least.
descriptive word and then another word.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Is that what he wants?
So I don't know if this really answers the question great, but I'm going to use the word fitting.
Okay.
Fitting.
I like that.
And the reason I say it is because, Shane, definitely I can relate to the unexpected. It's not what I went to school for or pursued an education in. But I do recall some stories of my younger adult days, right? So in those early 20 years, where a lot of my friends would say, okay, when we're doing whatever we were, I'm bringing the games, I'm planning. I didn't really think of that about anything, right? It was just fun to me. It was what I did. It was what I enjoyed. And so, it's kind of fitting that I ended up where I am. And, I think just to elaborate a little bit more on that, in addition to just having that, I guess, personal piece, right? This is what I did for fun. This is what I did on my, whatever you want to call it, leisure time. At the same time, and I think I've shared this before, but all of the jobs that I took, even, before college, my first jobs, and then throughout college, were all recreation related, but I didn't know that at the time, right? So obviously summer camp, if you had summer camp, in my case, it was a municipality. So clearly that relates directly. Like most of us are operating some kind of a summer camp, I would say, most departments. But also then I pursued working at a golf course, pursued working as a intramural ref, what else? Umpiring, working at the St. John Fisher Bills camp. All of those jobs really have a close correlation in relation to what we do now. So without intending, it seems fitting that I ended up where I am.
That's really cool. And I think there's a lot of people that would relate to both of those answers. And I think that's the beauty of this question. There's really no wrong answer. Obviously, it's going to be unique to everyone, but there's going to be a lot of overlap with people being able to agree with that.
2 words would have been a wrong answer.
True. Good point there. I'm going to say rewarding, because there is not probably a day that goes by or a week that passes where there's not some sort of interaction with staff or with a resident or with a public official or elected official that like we hear something that's not rewarding from the impact that we're having. And I will also just kind of go a little bit deeper in that I have some ties to today's guests and know that the path that they have taken has been extremely rewarding. firsthand just from talking to them and knowing what they do. So I think that's really unique, and we're going to dive into that. With
Wait,
that
before you
said,
go, just I would say that rewarding would have been one of the other ones that I thought of. I thought that was a cheat, so I feel like you cheated this. I didn't know if that was a good way to explain a career path. But what I would say would also be rewarding if I could reach through the screen somehow and push the red button behind Jay that I see every time. That would be
Yeah.
very rewarding.
What is that? Just want to scratch at it.
come visit, and I will let you hit the button.
Okay.
Nice. Don't tempt me with a fun time. I'll do it.
Okay, well, as I mentioned earlier, we have a little bit of a unique scenario, so I'm going to run through some fun facts of each of our guests. For our first guest, they started their career as an intern with the organization that they worked for 34 years. Okay, so pretty unique situation there. They started in 1986 and they were there for 34 years. They completed their internship on a Friday, went back, walked for their college graduation on a Saturday, and started on Monday. So what they thought would be a 16-week internship ended to be 34 years with the same department, which is pretty cool
And unexpected, I'd like to point out.
and unexpected and maybe fitting too,
Yeah,
right?
potentially
No,
fitting.
don't worry about that part.
This individual they're a huge football fan, and I know we talk about football here all the time, and they had the opportunity in 2011 to escort a group of NFL players after winning the Super Bowl as a Middle East Navy entertainment tour. So
Say 11 years ago?
no, in 2011.
Oh, 2011. Okay.
More than
Yeah.
11 years ago.
Yeah.
I was gonna say those are the dark days of the Patriots dynasty. That's the middle. So they didn't win a Super Bowl in 11.
Yeah. So they spent 7 days and they traveled over 14 stops to 5 countries and interacted with over 7,000 people to be able to give those folks this interaction to be able to meet and greet NFL Super Bowl winners. So pretty special there.
I don't know if I know who
Our
this
guest-
is.
You might.
JP.
So our guest loves to golf, and they had a hole-in-one at a high school golf outing. But the really funny thing about that story is that in previous years during this golf tournament, there was a $10,000 prize pool for anyone that got a hole-in-one. But that year they did not do the prize pool.
Fitting.
This guest is also a member
And
of
unexpected.
the NRPA. And unexpected. Our guest is also a member of the NRPA Board of Directors.
Yeah, I know.
And Tom, this guest was also on our NRPA career choice group panel as well. So that's the first guest. Our second guest has lived.
Does Tom know who the first guest is?
Tom, you think you know who it is?
I have a fairly good idea.
Okay. So our second guest has lived on 3 continents. I mentioned earlier we've had 77 episodes, and every episode we always have a bunch of hints like this. I'm going to put my foot in the ground and say this next fact is going to be the coolest fact that anyone's ever said. Okay?
Okay.
And there's history to it, and I actually haven't even shared this with the guest. But I mentioned this guest has worked or lived on 3 continents. To make it even more special, this guest has actually worked in Djibouti, Africa.
Wow.
And just for the sake of, because I have not
Shame.
mentioned this to the guest, I'm going to share why this is such a unique, special fact. But when we run our data on analytics of who's listening to our episode, we consistently, on a regular basis, have listeners in Djibouti. And I had
So
done
they
the
better
fact check.
blow us up with
So
this
the cool
one.
thing is the guest was not living there when those fact checks happened. So it wasn't the guest. But
Okay.
I now can say that we've talked to someone that has lived in Djibouti, Africa.
Where's
They
she?
have a major passion for traveling. They've been to 30 different countries. They have also spent their entire career in this area of our profession. They started their career in 2012 working for the first guest. So there's some ties there. They have 2 dogs they absolutely adore. They have a bachelor's degree from Radford University which also has ties to Brockport. Tom, if you knew that, I'm not sure.
Did they serve on the program committee?
I'm not sure they have. I don't believe so.
Oh, okay.
They have a master's degree from Illinois and currently work on the West Coast. Okay. I know you guess who the first one is, Shane, at least. Today's guests are the Management and Program Analyst for Navy Region Northwest and the Program Analyst for Navy Region Mid-Atlantic. Please welcome Bunny Allen and John Prue.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Hey, guys.
Hi, y'all.
How's it going?
It's going all right. Nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to have you on.
Nice to have you. Yeah.
So
Djibouti.
Bunny worked in Djibouti.
Yes, I did.
Is it everything we would have hoped it would have been?
Everything you could think and more. Really dusty, really hot, but pretty cool experience. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I know I said it a few minutes ago, but yeah, Bunny, we've had some listeners that are consistently listening from Djibouti. So I actually bought that shirt for Shane and mailed it to him one day. So
That's hilarious. That's pretty awesome. Now I'm so curious who is listening in Djibouti. That's pretty fantastic, y'all. You've got quite the reach.
That's right.
I guess so.
That's how strong it is.
Yeah. Well, I guess
One,
so. This is
one
our
wayward
first...
listener in Djibouti.
Jay, that was very fitting to get that shirt for Shane.
Yes, it was fitting.
100%.
Does it fit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's a little big.
What would have made this even more special is if he was wearing it today and not even knowing. So that would have been epic.
Yeah.
But so here's the thing. This is our first episode that has been completely dedicated to military recreation. And
Woo-hoo!
I'm really excited about it. I know we've mentioned a couple of things here and there. I actually did my internship with John at Naval Station Great Lakes. So I am very familiar with it. And that's where kind of our paths have tied. And that's why my word was rewarding, because when I was there, I was doing a lot of different things. But one of the roles I had was helping run sports leagues for active duty. And the rewarding part of that was, these folks are going through active training all day, every day. And it was so rewarding to see the excitement that they would find the energy every night to come over and do a sports league or, partake in some sort of sports activity and other programs that took place. But to get us started, would love to just kind of dive into what that path was for you to get to where you are and how you got into working for military recreation. And Bunny, why don't you lead us off?
Sure. So I was at Radford and completing general eds. And originally I had kind of gotten myself into the social work department. And I thought, I'm going to be a social worker. I want to help people. I feel like it's a really admirable profession to go into. But I quickly learned, oh my gosh, it is just so emotionally heartbreaking. So I thought, just kidding. Maybe that's really not for me. I don't know if I want to be sad forever. Right. So I happened to be walking, the social work classrooms were in the same building as the Recreation, Parks, and Tourism department. And I happened to be walking by one of the professor's offices, and she was talking with another student, and just hearing the professor speak, just in a quick couple minutes of walking by, I thought, that is a professor I want to hang out with. She sounds fantastic. The department just had like a really nice energy about it. So I quickly switched to recreation. I thought, that's it. I'm going to have fun for the rest of my life. And that's what I want to do. So part of that, we have to complete an internship, as most recreators do for their degrees. And my family is military, so I knew of MWR from my family. And I also had other friends who actually internshipped at Great Lakes as well with John. And so I knew that MWR could be a really great option for someone like me who wanted to do recreation, but also wanted the opportunity to travel. And obviously the Navy is a good opportunity for those people who are adventurous and they just want to get out and see everything. So thankfully, I got an internship with the Navy's Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Department, MWR, down in Tennessee at the Mid-South base. And I fell in love immediately. And after my internship was over, I accepted a job with John up at Naval Station Great Lakes outside of Chicago. And it's kind of been written in the stars from there. I've moved around a ton, and it's been fantastic.
That's awesome. And I think the internship definitely is an easy path for folks to find it. And that is something, like I said, that's how I did it. And I know there's a lot of other folks that got their foot in the door that way too, which is awesome that our universities and colleges have that requirement so that it can, get your feet wet with so many different areas.
Absolutely.
What about you, John?
Well, you kind of painted a little bit of the picture with the fun facts with my internship. Yeah, 16 weeks turned into 34 years. That's hard to believe. Quite amazing. But really just getting into it, a little bit of dumb luck, to be honest. I had worked for Green Bay. I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. A la why the Packers trip to the to the Super Bowl after their Super Bowl. That was the Packers, by the way.
I looked it up right after. I was so curious.
That was
Didn't
a
want to give
trip.
it away by saying Packers because I know,
Yeah, that was good.
assuming Shane knows you're a big Packers fan.
Yeah, I
Yes.
caught on to John's pretty quick.
Yeah, I heard him throw out the initials JP,
Yeah.
and I'm like, he
Yeah.
figured it out. So, but anyways, getting back to it, I had worked for the Park and Rec department in Green Bay all summer, so I thought I had some good experience. I had an offer from a minor league baseball team up in Wisconsin, the Appleton Foxes, which is a White Sox affiliate. And then another Park and Rec department had an internship opportunity for me. I got these offers, and I'm like, well, I need to do something different. At the last second, really, just a friend in our program, she gave me a call and said, hey, you need to check out this Great Lakes opportunity, military recreation. I swear I must have missed Rec 101 when they talked about military recreation because I didn't even know it was an option. And I said, well, tell me more about it. And then she started describing bowling centers and golf courses and marinas and ticket and travel offices, all these business lines that fall under there. And I was thinking merely what would look good on my resume. Swear to God. And so leap of faith, I said, yes, I'll take that one, give it a try, boost my resume. And then, yes, 16 weeks turned into 34 years. So that got me in there. But let me throw out another thing too, because you guys used your one word and I was thinking about it when you guys were describing, they were all great words. So for me, it was a little bit of dumb luck, which is two words. I'm not using that one. The one I am going to use is mission. It became my mission when I started there. And Jay, you talked about rewarding. I got that right away. As an intern, I got a chance to program, at the grassroots level. I got to see those sailors, those young men and women who were serving, enjoy these programs and how the programs we put on really put a smile on their face. And they are in some tough environments, especially in the training world. They're away from home for the first time. They just get out of boot camp. Great Lakes is kind of an A-school place where they learn their trade in the Navy before they go out to the fleet. And I could see that enjoyment. So that became a mission for me. And then obviously we're driven by mission in morale, welfare, and recreation. That's what it's all about. We support warfighters and their families. And so the mission is everything. And so that would be my word, mission.
I love that. I think if I had not gone with unexpected, service probably would have been my word, because at some point, whether it was coaching or thinking I might be teaching or doing recreation, public service is obviously service. I think what's cool about this podcast is that people listen to it and we try to expose people to new areas. I'm fascinated about this conversation in some ways because, first of all, I have four kids between the age of 24 and 17. So they're all at that pivotal moment in their lives where they're starting to make these decisions. And my youngest son is interested in IT, and you can do IT and probably never leave that community. Like, we're in Austin, right? So you can go IT at Dell and IT at Apple and IT at any city and IT, almost every school district, every business, almost every single entity needs someone to make sure that they unplug your computer and plug it back in when you complain about it not working. And so IT, is everywhere. But in schools, right? There's a school, there's an elementary school for every 800 kids in a community, and another 800 kids come in, there's no elementary school. And so some of that you might not have to leave an area, but for recreation, for service, you've got a municipality, you got a YMCA, you maybe have a college, and then you have this opportunity. I guess maybe there's some recreation on like a correctional basis, like at in prison rec or whatever, and then there's military rec, and that's kind of all we've got. And what that does is it it scatter shoots you potentially, right? And so I think all those spots potentially have service. All those people are service minded. I think the barrier to entry that I'd love to hear more about in the military rec is, you think, what's it going to be like for me as a civilian in Djibouti, right? I'm not one of them, right? I'm going to be on a base. What's my social life going to be like? What's my dating life going to be like? What's it going to be like on holidays when I'm separated and I'm, whether it's Tennessee or Great Lakes or Djibouti? And so I think that's probably a bigger hurdle for some in our industry to they probably check that off as not something they go through. How do you get someone does it have to be single people who want to travel, or are there married people that hop on and they take their families with them all over the world? What's that like?
Funny that you mentioned relationships and being single or married. I was single for about half of my career with MWR. When I worked with John at Great Lakes, I was single, right around kind of your kids' age. I was right out of college. So young adult, living my best young professional life. The opportunity to go overseas, and John supported it. I went to Romania for a couple months to help them stand up their recreation department on one of our new bases that we opened in kind of the middle of nowhere, Romania. And it was a temporary setup. I went over, and that was my first time being really far away from my family. As a single person out of college, really far away from my work colleagues that I had created really great relationships with. So it was a very unique experience. And from that, I kind of fell in love with being with the active duty members while they're so far away from their own home. So you mentioned the civilian, how it could be a barrier for them to be like, oh, what is my life going to be like? And it is. You can remain a civilian and still have a pretty normal civilian, everyday Joe Schmo life. You come to base, you do what you need to do, and then you leave and you go home to your family. But you can also be more engaged, and particularly overseas and in remote locations like Romania or Djibouti or Poland. And you are really much more with the active duty sailors because they're there without their families. They're living on a small base in the middle of nowhere. I found that to be really special. And that was kind of a calling to me to be there and live more of the lifestyle that they were living, even though it took me away from my family. And it was definitely quite an adjustment. It's really interesting kind of to build the bonds, even though you're a civilian and they're active duty. It's definitely one mission, like one fight. And you come together on many different levels to ensure that the sailors are getting what they need. The service members are always first and foremost in our minds. And what can we do for y'all? You're giving up so much to be here for us. You're giving up so much time, and you're giving up memories that you could be making with your family. You're giving up sometimes schooling because you have to be out in the middle of the desert on active field deployments. So you're giving up a lot. I feel like I can give up a little. What can we do for you? So it was really interesting. So yes, you can be single. You can also be married. When I left Romania, I went to Italy, and that's actually where I met my now husband. So I'm now married to an active duty sailor. MWR, military recreation, can send you around the world. A lot of times you can bring your family. Sometimes you can't, but you would know that in advance. So it just kind of depends on the lifestyle and how maybe out of your comfort zone you're willing to go. But I think a lot of us recreators, you mentioned service and John mentioned mission. We're in recreation because we want to help people. We want to have fun while we're doing it, but we want to help people. That's why we're in it. We have a strong passion for the mission and to give in service. If they're scared about applying for a military recreation job because they're nervous, what does it mean for me as a civilian? There's many different lifestyles that you can live while being a military recreation employee. So I think that if that's a barrier, it's a very easy one that you can overcome.
I had two cousins that were missionaries, and I'd always kid them. It never seemed like they got Paris. They were always in some, like, all right, when are you going to get the Rome appointment, right? So, like, when you see, you were at Djibouti and you said Italy. Italy sounds better than Djibouti on my end of the world, but I'm sure there's some really high, interesting placements, right?
Absolutely.
Are those super competitive when those open up? Are everyone from Djibouti trying to get to Paris or whatever, would be cool to travel? Or is is it more about the base, not so much where you go, but what the living's like, what the community's like, how safe or unsafe, or what is there a bowling alley you can offer and a golf course, or are you just running something? Is it more about the location you're kind of interested in, or is it more of what you get to do when you're on that spot?
Sure. So I think it's both, to be honest. These jobs are just normal jobs that we all apply for. We all compete for them just like you would with a normal rec department out in town. So you're actively applying and putting yourself up to go to Djibouti or to Italy or to Japan. So first, you'll know where the location is. And if you're interested, you'll know what the position is attached to, whether it's attached to the bowling center that, like you mentioned, or maybe it's attached to what we call our community recreation offices, which covers like outdoor recreation, our travel program, special events. So you'll know from the job posting what position it is, what facility it's with, what base, and what location overseas. So I think it's a mixture of both. For me, when I was in Romania, it was a temporary situation. I was loaned out from Great Lakes for a couple months. And then when I accepted the permanent position in Naples, Italy, I knew that I was going to be working with single service members. And it's those junior members, really from 18 to 25 years old, that are overseas by themselves. So I knew I was going to work with them and do special events and trips with them. And then, so I took it because of that. When I accepted the job in Djibouti is very unique because it's very remote. It's our only forward deployed location in Africa, and it's a joint base. So it's very unique, and you kind of do a little bit of everything while you're there because it's not a full-blown recreation department like our normal bases have. But I really took it because of the location, knowing that it's such a unique location, especially for a civilian to go to. I knew that it was going to be outside of my comfort zone a little bit. I would be much farther away from my then fiance and family. Living in the desert, Djibouti is straight up hot weather all the time. It is very much what you're thinking, like desert climate, and living in containerized living units. So we lived in Connex boxes. So I thought, okay, you know what? That's a wild setup for most people. But that's a really unique experience that I want to have. And our service members there, I feel like they need the support from MWR even more. So that makes me want to go there and put myself in an uncomfortable situation so that I can be there with them and support them while they're away from home in a crazy climate, sleeping in a Connex box. Like, absolutely. So Shane, I think it's really kind of the mix of both. The job that you're doing and the location can kind of play into it when you're thinking, oh, let me apply for that job. Let me try to go there.
I think Bunny hit it on. I mean, she's been to Djibouti. That's about the most unique location there is. So she knows what it's all about. I spent my career here in continental United States, but really, I think she emphasized the fact that our overseas locations are more, it's definitely a community over there. It's way different than on continental United States, or CONUS as we call it. It is the typical job. You come to work, you go home. Yeah, you have friends at work, you get together, but there are some bases, even Great Lakes was a little bit more like this towards the tail end of my career. It was very much a commuter base. And unless you stuck around for some of the events, and thankfully we had, at any given time, over 5,000 people living on base in barracks. So we always had an audience. A lot of the staffers, the other quote unquote 10, 15,000 people that worked on base weren't always around unless it was like a major event or something they specifically wanted to participate in. So much different world overseas. The one thing I do want to add is we are unique, especially in the Navy, because we actually have civilians that go out on the big decks. It's called deployed forces, a float recreation specialist and a float fitness specialist that go out on the amphibs and the carriers themselves. So you've got two civilians out there doing MWR for a community of, anywhere, depending on how many air wings are out on that carrier, anywhere from, 3,500, 4,000 to as many as 5,000 people that they're taking care of. And they go out on that deployment. So that's an interesting job. If you're in the right part of your life, it could be a great job. We're always looking for a float specialist to come in. But again, that's a unique lifestyle. So just gives you the broad spectrum of the types of jobs and how we go ahead and support our active duty and of course their families as well. So, hey, I do want to ask a side question if you don't mind. I keep looking at my screen and saying Moondoggy, and nobody has asked me the origin of Moondoggy. So,
let's hear it.
Let's hear it.
okay, well, I'll let Bunny take the second part why I used it, but the Moondoggy, for those you're all too young, was from the Gidget movies back in the late 50s and 60s. James Darren played Moondoggy, who was a main character in those movies. So that, and I'll let Bunny explain how Moondoggy came in and how it applies to me.
So I'm sure y'all are familiar with big special events, right? They're all day efforts where we're just out on the field working from like 5 a.m. until 11 p.m. And at Great Lakes, we have multi-day July 4th celebrations. They're on base and open to the public. So it's a huge effort that our team would work on for months and months and months leading up to the day. And the couple days of, like I said, we're out there from like 5 a.m. and we don't leave until like 11 p.m. each night. And then we have to be back the next morning. So to make it more fun, because, okay, sure, like we're there to support the members who are attending our event, but we want to have some fun too. We had these little, kind of called them the Britney Spears, like headsets, so that the staff could communicate with each other across the festival field because it's so large. Sure. And I thought, hey, let's have code names because that's really fun, obviously. So I made everyone decide their code names. And mine was White Rabbit because obviously Bunny is my name. So White Rabbit calling in for duty. And then I asked John, hey, like, what do you want your code name to be? And he said Moondoggy. And I said, yes, because I loved the Gidget movies when I was growing up. I wanted to be a surfer girl before I realized I'm not that coordinated. So that won't happen for me. So Moondoggy is his code name for when we do special events.
That's still the handle, huh?
It is.
Yeah,
really cool.
Yeah, back in the CB days, you had to have a handle.
That's great.
Yeah.
We've done something similar at events before, but they don't stick, and that leads me to, I couldn't even tell you them, right? Like they don't stick. We change it every time. That leads me to this question that I have is and just give a little background. NRPA has a military network, right? Mm-hmm. So and so Shane and Jay, you might remember a young man named Bo.
Hutchins. Hutchins.
Bo Hutchins.
Yep.
Yeah.
So met Bo. He's awesome. And this whole time, and I got to learn a little bit more from Bo, but this whole time when I was introduced to that, I thought it was, active military members who just happened to be, I don't know if deployed is the right word, but they were given a post as a recreation coordinator. I did not realize this whole time that it was civilians. John, when I'm in a meeting with you or on a call with you, I've noticed a lot of your and in emails too, you're using and referencing military time. Mm-hmm. A lot of the time, some of your responses are over or I could be making that up. I don't know if that's, anyhow, my point is
Moondoggy out.
Yes.
Yeah. So
out here.
My question for you both is, what is it like, or what has it been like, especially given the amount of time to acclimate to the regiment, the scheduling, the hours? It's just
the culture.
The culture. It's something that most of us can't relate to. Clearly, I think that's something, you feel like it's almost this, you're on the inside and everybody on the outside really doesn't have a huge awareness or knowledge of what it's like to be inside that culture. I've known individuals who I went to school with who were in our ROTC programs, totally different regiment and schedule. My cousin is in the Navy. He's in a senior position at this point, but he's been based out of San Francisco for a long time now. So I know individuals, right? But I've never been in the culture. And I guess that's my question. What's it like to acclimate to that, to be a part of it? And maybe a secondary question, how do the active military and Navy, how do those individuals receive you all as civilians?
I'll take this one first. It takes a little bit. And we have indoctrination programs coming in, and we throw a lot of things at our new employees, especially if you're full-time or a manager, you need to kind of grasp that versus maybe some of our frontline people quicker at least. But everybody needs to know the culture. So just knowing the rates and ranks and insignias and uniforms and know who's who. Hey, that's a captain. That's an '06 in the United States Navy, and they did a lot to earn that rate and rank. So very important. They learned that on the enlisted side. Same thing. They've got senior enlisted versus officers. We saw a lot more enlisted. We didn't have that many officers per the population, at least at Great Lakes. So you needed to know that senior enlisted or junior enlisted and where they were. That's important. The other thing is acronyms. I'll throw in acronyms, and my wife kills me all the time on this thing because I will use references. Even MWR. Everybody knows MWR, but if you're not in the business, do you know it stands for morale? T is morale, welfare, and recreation. And I always say de-emphasize the welfare. Not everything's free in MWR.
That's interesting.
MWR all the way, it's just one acronym that we use. So we give people lists of acronyms that they're going to hear, and you can't coach that. And that some of that's inherent. Over time you're going to figure it out. Or we always ask our employees, just ask, please. If we throw out an acronym and you don't know, just ask. You're not going to offend anybody. We'll tell you. The other thing is something so simple that if you're on a military base, colors in the morning. They do the national anthem and they play taps at the end, or colors in the evening. When that happens, you are standing at attention. The military folks will actually salute the flag, but you turn to the flag. And if you're driving on base, you stop when colors happen. So things that are even those minute, you got to remember to tell those folks, because you don't want to surprise. One, there's etiquette, military etiquette, but more importantly, you don't want to put them in an awkward situation as well. So there's a lot of communication on that. So it's a great question, Tom, and there's a lot of acclimation that comes in there. And of course, you hit the time as well. Just talking in military time, and your lingo just changes dramatically because the lingo of the military changes. So those little catchphrases that everybody uses all of a sudden folds into your language, and more reason for my wife to hit me when I'm talking that way at home.
Well, it's so fascinating, right? And I, as a civilian, right, I wonder if you're out there and you just kind of mess up a little bit, and it's like, yeah, we're going to be meeting at the bowling alley at 12 o'clock, right? And so do you get a slap on the wrist for that? And to that point, it's incredible to feel that I can jump, or at least I felt like I could when I was really younger in my career. I told you those roles that I kind of shifted through. I felt like I could just jump into those roles, and there wasn't a huge learning curve, right? If I wanted to jump into this role, into a role with MWR, that's a whole new education. I mean, that's not even, it's mind blowing, really. It's very impressive.
One more thing I'll add too, and I was just writing. I've written the article. It's going to publish in September on the 60th anniversary on kind of the history and the ties to Armed Forces Recreation and NRPA going back to the early days. But it really was around the late 60s that they started to create, or early 60s, mid 60s, they created kind of a civ sub situation. There we go, another acronym. Civilian.
We get it. You know the
supplements.
acronyms, John.
Yeah, civilian supplements. And what happened was any of the military that were actively in those services or recreational services, or called MWR, started to get pulled out. Those billets got pulled out, and civilians were replacing those billets. Now, we always ultimately report to the commanding officer of a base or senior officer of some kind, but we're pretty civilianized. The only difference right now is really the Air Force, and although they are heavily populated with civilians in their force, they still have active military billets. They actually have a track within the Air Force military community that supports what they call services, but it's called MWR over there as well.
That does happen. That active members do have a part in that.
In the Air Force, predominantly. Yeah.
Before Jay hops on, Bunny, it sounds like you've lived at least on one or two of these different bases that you've served. I don't know if John ever has, but would living on the base, I would imagine it feels a little different, but it probably speeds you up into catching up to the culture. You're probably not walking around with a bathrobe and shoes and drinking coffee at 9:30 while the guys have done their PT and colors. Like you kind of get onto a routine.
Yeah. So on our remote bases, such as Romania and Djibouti, absolutely, you catch on to the base culture very quickly. To John's point, it's definitely a learning curve, right? As y'all mentioned, kind of jumping into MWR recreation at any of our armed services, it is definitely a learning curve, the acronyms and learning all the ranks and everything. One thing I have noticed, I feel the active duty, whether they're enlisted or they're officers, they're pretty lenient with us. If we mess up on a rank on accident, or their rate, which is like what they do, whether they're maybe they work in the hospital, so we call them a corpsman, or if they are one of our gate guards, we call them an MA, Master at Arms. So if we get that confused, they're usually pretty generous and give us grace and know that we're civilians. We're not doing it to be disrespectful. I think something that's important that probably all of us do, no matter what type of recreation we're in, is we're treating everyone like they're an admiral. It doesn't matter to me and John if you just came out of boot camp and you don't even know how to tie your boots. Like, we're going to treat you like you're an admiral because you are here. You're doing something amazing for your country that many other people wouldn't even sign up to do. So we're going to treat you all the same, which is a very high level. But that also helps me not get in trouble if I do run into an admiral or a higher officer and I miss his pins on his uniform. I treat them all very nicely to make sure that I don't mess up on the back end.
You almost need a rule for no admirals. Like if they played in the golf tournament, don't they automatically win? Everyone defers to the admiral. No one outputs the admiral, right? No one fouls the admiral when he's coming through the lane.
Automatic two-putt.
Yeah. There you go. Right. But John was, mentioning that his wife, will get on him for using acronyms and stuff. I have it a little easier because my husband is active duty. So I actually go to him, and if I hear something at work, I'll go home and I'm like, Jer, what does this mean? What do these three letters mean? I don't understand it. And he's kind of like my little spark notes of military culture and stuff. So that is helpful.
Yeah, he's your very own Chat GPT.
Yeah, I pull him out and I'm like, what's going on with this? Tell me more about it. But overseas, we don't always have to live on base. That's mainly in our remote locations that the civilians live on base as well. And a lot of our overseas locations like Italy, Spain, Japan, civilians are able to live off base in the community. So not only are you kind of getting that overseas military culture, you're also getting the actual local culture of whatever country you're living in. So I did not live on base in Naples. I lived out in town in an Italian community with Italian neighbors, Italian landlords. Very cool experience to still be an American who's definitely serving those who serve and being attached to the military community and having that sense of Navy pride, but also being like, oh, I'm an American and I live in Italy and I'm, have Italian friends and going to Italian stores and have my Italian driver's license.
Having gelato and yeah.
You should have seen her wine collection.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
What do you have to declare or not declare? That's the question.
Well, so what the great thing is when civilians go overseas to work for Navy MWR, for example, we do go on orders. So work is helping us pay and helping us get our visas set up for whatever country you're going to.
Do you get a housing stipend potentially too?
Yeah.
Oh,
so when I lived off base, lived off base in Italy, I got what we call a living allowance based off of my my level of being I'm trying to explain, not GS. Most federal employees are considered general schedule GS. A lot of us that work for military recreation, we call ourselves NAF, non-appropriated fund. So based off of your NAF level, that is how they set your living allowance. And it's so generous. I was living off base in a full, almost villa with a pool, and I was 26. And wow. Yes. So it was just, it's such an amazing opportunity to not only be able to support the military, whether stateside or overseas, because that's such an important such an important mission. And again, we circle back to that word service, right? It's such an important thing. But then to also have the opportunity to live overseas and to be supported with appropriate resources from, MWR to ensure that we can live there. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's and you mentioned NAF, non-appropriated funds. Just let you know, your taxpayer dollars are not paying for those positions. They're self-generated revenues through our retail association, the Navy Exchange or the PXs, and then of course money that we generate through some of our business lines as well. So just wanted to clarify that. And hey, one other thing too, and we're talking about jobs or career entry here. Did you realize that we have over 64,000 positions around the world within MWR, and that's youth and child services in addition? We serve over 6 million customers if you count retirees and civilians and active duty military. And we are $4.8 billion industry if you count MWR and CYP across the board. We run over 5,000 programs at over 300 bases around the world. So career opportunities, there's plenty of them. And hopefully we're knocking some barriers out that it's not so bad. And you're not going to get orders to go somewhere. They're not going to ship you out. You're not mandated to go anywhere. It's total freedom of choice.
Yeah, I was going to ask something similar, John. I'm glad you brought that up. And the career choice campaign that we're all a part of, and obviously having some representation, and you're an amazing representative of the armed forces. And so that armed forces network. And Bunny, if I'm not mistaken, if my eyes aren't playing tricks on me, it looks like you have an NRPA conference badge in the background. Is that correct?
I do. It's from, I think, last year's or the year before, 2 years ago, I think. Yes.
So that was going to be my question is what, and John, you serve on the board of directors. What does NRPA, or how does NRPA assist with the armed forces, recreation side of things? How is it beneficial? How is the experience for you going to conference? For us, or at least for the 260 or whatever sessions that they have, I think the majority of us, the civilians I know you're civilians too, but the non-armed forces individuals, if they see something that's on armed forces, I'm sure that they're, kind of glossing over it if they're not pursuing that. But is there a lot to offer? What is that experience for you all to be involved with NRPA?
Well, I think it's great. And just stepping off, I'm the past chair. I was the chair for a couple of years, and I've been involved with the network for many years. I don't even want to go back how many years I've been involved with that network. But believe it or not, it is the only platform for that kind of mid-level, even senior level MWR folks from across the services, including Coast Guard, even though they're Homeland Security, to get together and have a conversation. Believe it or not, it just does not happen.
Is that because the branches don't always talk to each other as well?
A little bit. You would think that everything's the same. We all fall under the Doty 1015 instruction, and that's a fun read. I'll let you know that. But we all have, each services have their own instruction off of that. So they fall under the guidelines, but they all kind of do their own thing. And ultimately, communication, yes, we work with our folks at the Office of Secretary of Defense through DOD. We get pulled together for working groups kind of at a senior level. But for the most part, the typical programmer and mid-level manager, they don't talk to anybody in the other services. So I always emphasize that to Christine Stratton and my fellow board of directors that it's super important, because without this network, we really don't have a good way to communicate. And so Armed Forces, I think, opens up the communication. The last couple of years, we've done some new things. We've brought back something from way back in the day when we used to do, our own conferences, our own awards program under the old format of NRPA. We brought back Meet the Chiefs. Super important. We get the highest level folks, civilian folks within the services that kind of oversee the quality of life programs that we offer, and they open up and answer some questions and talk big picture what's happening. So we did that for a couple of years, and then last year, for the first time, In 13 years, we had a professional training institute, and we had well over 200 Armed Forces Recreation folks at conference last year to get together and actually, yeah, it's training, but more or less it's networking and communication, and you can go back home and now you've met somebody new that's in the Air Force or the Army doing something that you're doing, and we can make that connection. So NRPA is always about connections. And it really does hit home with Armed Forces Recreation. And of course, NRPA, from a broader perspective, if you know, we rolled out the strategic plan last conference. And I think, that the system change, the leadership, all of the key elements that we brought into that strategic plan can help as long as people participate. And so we internally with the network, yeah, we have 1,600 members. We're one of the largest networks out there. Not everybody's actively there. We have premier memberships. So, there's 8 to 10 people from every base across the country or across the world. And of course, we have some folks or the other services do the same thing. But we have a small percentage. It's kind of like every network probably, but we're just expanded a little more because of the size and because of our locations around the world. But we need more participation to keep it going. So we're doing good things. That's my pitch for anybody listening on that Armed Forces network to get more involved. And the other key thing, and you all know it, NRPA pretty well. Those networks, we do have some members that don't work in armed forces, but they're curious what we do. And so they're part of that network. And we enjoy having those folks on because one, we'll hook them for one of our jobs. But better yet, they've got good ideas. And it's just that cross communication, which just makes everybody's job a little easier down the line, and that professional development that we all need.
But I would also think that when people go to conference and they see the gold medal awards and they see that there's military bases being recognized as a gold medal agency, that piques their interest as well. And that in some cases might be someone's first awareness that is an option. And I want to kind of back up to one of the things you said a minute ago, John, about number of programs, the number of facilities, because I think there's still this, and obviously we've talked about it, there's a lot of similarities with municipalities with what you operate with recreation centers and fitness centers and pools. And the program side of it that you just mentioned, there's traditional programs that you may offer that we offer at all, rec centers and municipalities around the country. Is there a program or event that you've done on one of your bases or in your career path that is maybe more unique that you may not see in a traditional recreation center for a city or municipality?
I have some good ones, but I'm going to let Bunny go first.
Oh, okay. So there's a few. It's hard to pick one, honestly. I think if I was to pick one of our services across the enterprise that I personally am most passionate about and love would be our tickets and travel service that we offer through our community recreation centers. I mentioned it earlier. That's where we do like our outdoor recreation, gear checkout. Often our recreation centers have, food and beverage snack bars or movie theaters in them or little bowling areas. But then a large portion of what we offer is leisure travel referrals or leisure travel help assistance with retirees and even young families to book vacations at a really great price so that they can afford to go and make really amazing memories while they have the time together. In addition to helping those families secure entertainment tickets or flights to do, again, kind of focusing on the leisure travel aspect. So that would probably be my favorite service that we offer. And then if I had to pick a special event or a program that I think is really special that I've always loved, it would be the big 4th of July festival that we do at Great Lakes when I was there. It was truly a really special, monumental effort, a lot of work from everyone on the team and across all levels, from our front line all the way up to our senior leadership. Everyone was hands-on, everyone was doing their part. And that it's, like I said earlier, it was open house. So while it was on base, we opened the base for the public to come on and kind of experience not only something really patriotic, July 4th festival, like that's pretty classic, but also on a military installation. And obviously John and Jay have seen Great Lakes. It's where we held the festival is a really historic looking part of base. So that for me is always a pretty special event memory.
Yeah, it's hard to believe we pulled a pretty good fireworks show off every year too in front of that clock tower on a very short porch. We couldn't use anything bigger than a 5-inch shell, which doesn't sound very impressive, but on that short porch, we entertained. We were known as kind of the best fireworks north of Chicago and south of Milwaukee. And I'd put our fireworks show up against anything down or up in Milwaukee. That's for sure. I've seen more.
Some of those services Buddy talked about hit me because I think in my head, I thought you're going out and just providing intramural type activities, right? Giving the guys and gals a chance. But then John mentioned it earlier that the programs aren't necessarily free. And then Buddy talked about like you're doing some traveling. Like I guess maybe you could be stationed in Italy and then there's this bike hiking tour or whatever, and you take them on it or whatever. And so are there some free programs and then there's some paid programs and it's subsidized in some capacity? Do they have some sort of allowance that they can use on MWR things, or do they have to go in pocket if they want to do some of these really cool travel experiences?
Yeah, so we have a few different ways that we fund different opportunities depending on the target population. So for example, if it's a trip, like let's say overseas in Italy, I planned, I think 24 out of country trips where I took
as you would, right?
Yeah, right. As I would.
And you got to go on all of them.
I mean, Shane, I don't want to
That's
say
the
like I'm the
craziest
best
thing.
trip leader, but I'm the best trip leader. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have a fun time. So for those junior sailors, which were my focus for those trips, the sailors paid for their spot, but because I was booking group travel, I was able to secure a more affordable kind of rate for the sailors through group travel discounts. And we have different accesses to travel consortiums that we're able to use to ensure that we're getting the best deal possible. But the sailor is paying out of pocket for that. Okay. We offer them to pay with payment plans to make it easier for them for the junior sailors. If we're offering a program on base for those junior sailors, maybe we're going to do paintball or we're going to do, glow in the dark mini golf because maybe we own like a little portable set. That is free for the sailor. They're able to come on and just participate. And that's because we have a budget that the MWR department makes every year. And as John mentioned, a lot of our budget, a very good amount of it is because it's self-generated revenue. So if we have a movie theater on base, we're charging tickets, admission to go see the movie. It's going to be more affordable compared to what it is off base to go to like a big movie theater out in town.
But it still has to generate some sort of revenue.
Yes, absolutely. If we have golf courses, our participants, our patrons are coming and they're paying a fee to do a round or to go to the driving range. So a lot of the funds that we have are self-generated, and that is what we're using to support any free programming that we offer on base. If we're taking people off of base, they're usually paying some out of pocket, but we try to make it very affordable.
And without giving a tutorial on this, we have programs that are divided up per Department of Defense, all the services, Category A, Category B, and Category C. Category A being Mission Essential. Those are completely free programs, fitness, intramural sports, the single sailor program, that kind of thing. Category B are kind of the events where it's probably subsidized with taxpayer dollars, but the user fees are there and very minimal. And then we have Category C, which are really commercial activities, those business lines that you're talking about that you got to make a profit. We pay our utility bill as an entity. We pay utility, so you need to at least break even or potentially make a profit, which becomes that whole profitability, and that's how we recapitalize ourselves on that non-appropriated fund side. So real quickly too, my favorite business line, because we have them all. We run recreational lodging, we run hotels, we run all sorts of stuff out there at Great Lakes, because we have boot camp and graduations happening almost weekly, about 48 weeks out of the year. We had 120 130,000 people coming to Great Lakes over the year. We took advantage of that retail opportunity and was out there every Friday morning selling, small concessions, trinkets, various other things. And we created a program, I think it goes back about 15, almost 20 years ago, the divisional t-shirt program. Basically, the sailors get together in boot camp. And I'll be quick about this. They create by hand a logo that depicts their division that they're going to spend their, now it's 10 weeks. It used to be 9 weeks in boot camp. And they create this picture. We digitize it and put it on t-shirts and hoodies. And you will see people walking around. To this day, it's out there. We sell plenty of them at a really good price. Our markup's very small. But guess what? It does $1.7 million worth of business annually. So we're fulfilling a need because they never could do that before. Matter of fact, they would take that flag at the end. Sometimes they would cut it up into 80 pieces, which is the size of the division, and give everybody a piece of that flag. Well, you've destroyed the logo. And we created this program for the first time out of boot camp, and it became a good revenue generator, which then we could take and plow into programs that are absolutely free. So we're allowed to be an entrepreneur in here, and we've got some wild business lines. So I always say we're the Park District on steroids. So that's my line.
Awesome.
I like it. I like that.
Well, we're going to roll into what we typically call rapid fire and just fire off some quick questions. And first thing that comes to mind is what we're looking for. And I have the honor to go first. And I'm going to ask Bunny a separate question, then I'm going to ask John. So Bunny, you're going to go first.
Okay.
And we talked about traveling. What is your all-time favorite city that you've been to so far?
All-time favorite city would have to be, oh my God, and it's rapid fire. Now I'm getting stressed. I can't think of, okay. I got it. I would say probably Athens, Greece is probably pretty up there for me. I love mythology. I love, ancient history, and just to kind of be in Greece, first of all, is amazing. But yeah, Athens is pretty cool just from the historical aspect, and beautiful water, right next to the city. So I would say that.
Yeah. Awesome. And then John, my question for you, because I know we talked about football and I know you are a just huge Packers fan. Who is your all-time favorite Packer?
Ooh, good question.
You have to
Yeah, we have lots of debates. Bart Starr.
Reggie White.
Bart Starr.
Bart Starr, great quarterback. Had the first real three-peat, 65, 66, 67. Everybody was talking about it with the Chiefs this year. No go. Packers had it. They actually had it back in 29, 30, and 31. They had a three-peat. So they've done it twice as an organization. But no, Bart Starr was awesome. Not only a leader, great passer at the time when it was typically running, and they had a traditional running attack, run to daylight, they always said. So I love number 15, Bart Starr. Cool. Great guy, great family, and great NFL player.
So John, you're not the guy that I want to talk to about renaming the Lombardi Trophy to the Belichick Trophy. Then I'm pretty sure we're in the wrong.
I've heard enough people talk about that.
He'll get something. I don't think they should rename it, but I'm sure there will be something there.
Name it after his girlfriend. So.
No, shots fired.
Yeah, shots fired. All right, so I want to sell the profession. You've sold it to me. You've sold it so well. I mean, to an extent that for someone who's been in the field for a while and has access and a network of individuals who do so much of what we do, but in all these different areas, I learned so much today. So thank you for that.
Great.
My question for you is going to start with just a quick premise of, we talk about on this show a lot on the podcast and with all of our colleagues, we have the conversation once in a while about the perks, right? And maybe it's because my kid gets to go up on stage with me at a 4th of July event, or they get to stay behind at a...
Just one kid, by the way, Jay. You see that?
Just the one. Just the one. They get to stay behind at an animal showing when everybody else leaves and gets they get a private, right? Things like that. Some of what you've described, Bunny, especially the travel piece, is, it's
right?
a little
Chef's
different,
kiss.
right?
Yes.
So the Athens piece, was that through work?
Absolutely. So It was one of the trips that I took junior sailors to go to Athens. Definitely.
So my question is, what is that greatest behind the scenes perk of an individual who goes into the field in your area?
Yeah, I would say for me, if you're working overseas and you're like a programmer or one of our managers for Liberty, our single sailor program, or community recreation for like all of our other patrons, the travel, getting to be a trip leader. When I lived in Djibouti, I got to lead 2 different safaris to South Africa and Tanzania. And like, that's
amazing.
10 out of 10.
Yeah.
So cool to go on safari with a group of sailors. Or I mentioned Athens. I took sailors to Montenegro to go whitewater rafting on Europe's deepest river, or to Croatia to go sailing. And I had sailors that had never been swimming. Sailors in the Navy had done, their swim test to join the Navy in a pool, but they had never been swimming in an ocean, or they had never been snorkeling, or they had never been whitewater rafting. So for me, the perk is being the trip leader and then getting to be the person who gets them to try something new, and hopefully I get them hooked on like a new leisure skill. So that would be the coolest benefit, I think, from my point of view.
How about you, John? Yeah. And I don't know if that Super Bowl that's
yeah.
Again, these are pretty larger than life.
Yeah,
landing be pretty cool.
Doing an arrested landing on an aircraft carrier that was 200 miles off the coast of Afghanistan at the time in 2011 in the middle of the Arabian Sea was pretty cool, with the Green Bay Packers too.
There you go.
And we survived. No, I would say a couple things. Access to ships. I mean, in the right situation, we've done plenty of tours on ships, even if you're not attached to a ship, to be able to go to Norfolk or San Diego or Bremerton, Washington, and be able to, get on the tour. And I know we took a family trip many moons ago related to San Diego area, and we got on John Stennis, thanks to Stacy Dietrich, who's still out there in the world and wasn't a float specialist on there, but it was great to tour that ship. That's a little perk. Obviously, you got to have some IDs. And fortunate to even take Neelay and Ed Matthews out on a little tour when I was there for the Virginia State Conference. We met up. I was speaking. Well, we were all speaking and part of that conference, and got a chance to take them down into Norfolk and got them on a ship as well. One last one is there are a number of armed forces resorts that are out there. They're all over the world. The Halikoa in Hawaii, the Shades of Green down in Orlando. There's one at the base of the Alps in Germany. There's another one in South Korea. They're all over the world. These 5, I believe it's 5 resorts, are only access for DoD personnel, meaning you have to be eligible retiree, military family, active duty, or DoD. And so taking advantage of those resorts, which are just wild and incredibly affordable. But that's another business line that the Army controls with those resorts. So those would be just a couple, but we could go on and on.
I'm sure. And what I hear in addition to everything you shared, what I hear is you not only look toward getting in the profession, but maybe just get to know Bunny and John and visit them. And
we're pretty cool. Like,
so
brag.
Are those special resorts MWR as well, just on the Army side?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are MWR staff? Okay, cool.
Yeah. So we're in the resort. We're in the resort business too.
Yeah.
I guess so.
We like to dabble in a little everything.
My question is, this has been great, and maybe it's enticing people who I think initially thought, if you're going to get in this industry, you have to do it young in your career. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm interested in the float specialist because I'm 230. I already float. So maybe that's what I want to do. But like, if I was going over at some point at this time or later in my career, what would you recommend as a job to consider?
Yeah, that's a great question, Shane. Mm-hmm. It's two-way. It's hard for sometimes us to cross over into the Parks and Rec world when you get to a certain level in an organization. And equally, sometimes it's a challenge for Parks and Rec directors to come over, especially at that MWR director level, because a lot of times those jobs...
we'd be out of our depth in that job, I think. Yeah, for sure.
You need experience from that standpoint. Now, at the mid-level management, I think you could cross over easily easily. I have also seen some folks that actually have kind of stepped down. They were a little more senior in the Parks and Rec world, take a little bit lower job, but their skills showed out, and there's always turnover. People are moving, and they fleeted up really quick because they got that baseline experience for a year and a half, and there they are. They're an MWR director, and they didn't serve that much time, but they proved their worth, and they learned the acronyms. So
stepping down to step up. We've talked about that before. That's great.
yeah, sometimes you got to do it.
I wanted to add, when you were talking about the acronyms, so I did my internship exactly 20 years ago. I came out of there May of 2000.
Okay.
And I
Well, it's
remember
June,
getting,
so it's not exactly 20.
I remember
You know what? I'll give
getting,
it to you, though. I'll give it to you.
I remember getting the acronym sheet. And like to this day, like you mentioned NAF, I remember what that meant because I studied that thing. And I knew I was going to be not quizzed, but it's like I did not want to not know what they were when I'm walking around a base or I see something written or I get a letter or something. So I can attest that that is definitely a thing. And there were a lot of acronyms.
Yeah. Acronym soup for sure.
That can also relate to your answer, Bunny, earlier about the trips. Because I remember going on a couple of trips, and one of them I went to a Chicago Bulls game.
Oh, cool.
I'd never been to the United Center, but it was, I forgot what the price was, but very, very affordable to go on a bus with other active duty and go catch a game, and it was fun. It was a great experience.
That's great.
Oh, awesome.
I was going to say there was one, sometimes you pick up on just military culture, and at boot camp, they're always training. They're turning civilians into sailors. So we got used to, one time we had a comedy show that was being filmed for Comedy Central, and we had some comics in there, and they were trying to learn the culture. So they're over at boot camp, and they hear some RDC, Recruit Division Commander, who's in charge, yelling at recruits, how it goes, trying to train them up, talking about a gig line. And they're going, what's a gig line? So he ended up doing a whole spiel on gig lines, but basically a gig line is that button, your buttons follow to your belt buckle, and it should be in a straight line. So always get your gig line together. So just remember that, boys.
When I see you guys, disaster.
When I see you all at conference, I'm going to be checking the gig line.
Okay.
That's right.
Shane doesn't wear a gig line.
I'll be a disaster.
At least be two of us.
Shane's never going to have buttons.
It's a gig area.
Fair,
is what it looks
fair.
Like. My last question for rapid fire is: you're working with this military machine, and it never rests, right? Like sometimes we have seasonal stuff. Like falls can sometimes be easier. We kind of feel like we're in peak season right now. The military machine doesn't ever rest, right? And then on top of that, you're potentially living on a base. So what does relaxing look like? What does work-life balance look like? What does getting away from it if you're in Djibouti? So do you get a different Connex box? Are you, do you have a little flyer of, Italy or, like your brochure of, I mean, what does getting away from it look like when you're in this job? Because I feel like you could feel obligated to be thinking about this and doing this 60, 70, 80 hours a week if you're not careful, right?
Right. I think, we talked about this briefly. Being stateside on a base, working as an MWR professional is a little different. You go to work, you do your thing, and then you can go home. So that I feel like has a very normal work-life balance stateside, even though the tempo of work is high almost all the time, just because we always have things going on. Overseas, definitely different. In Djibouti, I was working almost 7 days a week. I kind of got exhausted. I definitely burnt out after my year there doing all of the fun stuff. So when I moved back stateside with my husband, we got orders to California. I kind of took a step back from programming and being in the facility and doing the fun stuff, being the fun person, which is funny because obviously I wanted to do that forever. It's a lot to always be the fun person and be on and be responsible for other people going on country trips. It can be a lot of stress. So I stepped to kind of the support service side, which is what I'm doing now in Washington. I now support them similar to what John does in his analyst role. We're now supporting. We're doing data calls. We're helping with budgeting. We're doing financial analysis. We're doing, management analysis. So I'm still involved in recreation, but I had to kind of take a step back for my own work-life balance and kind of go to a little bit more of a normal 9 to 5 because I was just kind of overworked and a little bit exhausted. even though it's all good stuff and fun, at some point, mama just needs a little bit of a break. So I'm in my break period, y'all. 9 to 5.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
the op tempo or operation tempo is ebbs and flows. So when it's up there, it's high stress and everybody is running around and it's crazy. But there are some lulls throughout the year. And again, it depends what's happening around in the world and at your particular base. I will say MWR folks, especially at a senior level, if you're an MWR director, you are a full participant of the Emergency Operations Center. So we interact with local law enforcement, fire, the local FBI, NCIS, everybody. So one, we train a lot, but God forbid there's some emergencies. We're very involved,
Yes.
and they expect it. We have facilities, we have programs, and quite frankly, we have the know-how to plan, which is a key element if you've done any of the FEMA training related to emergency management. So it can be pretty intense in terms of the op tempo.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to go back to one thing. It's very, very quick. This is a rapid fire for Jay and Shane.
Nope.
Maybe
Thank y'all for
John.
coming. We'll talk to y'all next time.
Funny.
That's
funny
all
when-
for
when-
RecLess.
So I have not as traveled as most individuals probably, but I had the opportunity to go to Europe for our honeymoon, like a 2.5 week
awesome.
type of thing. Spent the majority of the time in Italy, and also it sounds like you know some Italian.
Un poco.
So my question, I mentioned gelato, and Bunny, I believe you said va bene.
See.
Jay, Shane, without Googling it, do you know what that means?
No,
I do not.
no.
How about you, John? How's your Italian?
Gelato? Do I know what gelato is?
I know gelato.
Ready?
How about-
No, I'm beyond gelato. I'm out.
Okay, all right.
I would have to find an expat community very quickly if I was in Italy.
we got
means
some
moon.
work to do.
It means moondoggy in Italian.
That's right.
That's
right.
right. Moondoggy over.
White rabbit and moondoggy out.
That's right.
Well, Bunny and John, this was absolutely phenomenal. I was so thrilled to have this, and I feel very fortunate to
Could have gone another
have that
hour.
internship with MWR. And yes, we could. We absolutely could. And I really, I hope that this brings more awareness to opportunities that are out there, to people currently in the profession, maybe people that are looking for the profession. And I've had that conversation with a lot of college students and young professionals, and we'll continue to push that. And, hopefully this has an impact on maybe some opportunities for people to learn about it and go down that path. So
Future
thank you
float
for being here today.
specialist, Shane Mize.
There you go.
Yeah, y'all, thank you so much. This was fantastic. Really nice to chat with y'all. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, everyone listening, come work with us, Navy MWR.
Yes.
It's the place to be.
That's cool. Thank y'all.
Hey, great to see you guys always, and hopefully we'll catch you in Orlando. And I have to end it this way. Go Navy, beat Army.
Okay.
Bye, y'all.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
That was incredible.
It was a really,
So-
really great episode. Thanks, Jay.
We have been planning this. John and I have been talking for quite a while. So I've been just waiting for this moment because, we've talked about it. I loved my internship and could go on and on about other opportunities that I've had to talk with others about. And what they do is just, it's absolutely incredible. And I don't think enough people know about it.
No.
And I think if more people knew about it, they would definitely be very interested in that. So hopefully that does that. Hopefully we can bring some awareness to it, make some opportunities for folks come to reality of traveling to places they'd never have been to that they would love to go to because there's an opportunity for them to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I said it in the middle of the show. I learned so much today, and I learned on every one of our episodes, right? But this is definitely a lot farther removed than what I think what we think of as the typical Parks and Rec professional, right? And to be able to experience, I didn't ask this because we were just going down that rabbit hole and I could have kept going. But, when you go and you board a plane and it's, active military duty, you go ahead and board, or you think about these different perks. There's a lot to it, right? There's a lot to what they do and deal with when you're obviously in the armed forces. But to have that other side of it, to provide an outlet to those individuals, that probably goes unnoticed. We may not have even talked about that enough today. It's really fascinating, very inspiring that that's a position out there, and individuals like John and Bunny do that every day.
It's really tough because there's so many topics that we could have covered today
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
that we didn't even touch
Didn't
on.
get close
And
to it.
that's-
I'd love to know the
Yeah.
budget process. Like when we talk about drinking
Sure.
from a water hose and how you're learning something new, that whole conversation was like drinking from a water hose. Like it
Yeah.
just was fact after fact about something else I had never really thought of, never really considered. And it's like, man, I'd love to know their full budgeting process and their revenue streams. And I'd love to know, a lot more about on base and off base. And we covered some of it,
Yeah.
but there's honestly could have gone a full another hour with them.
Well, it's so unique because on one hand, there's a ton of similarities,
Yeah.
with the programs and the facilities. But
Maybe
then on the
80%
other
are the same, but that 20%,
oh, 100%.
night and day.
I mean, John mentioned it briefly with like the concessions and food and beverage, but like they operate restaurants.
Yeah.
So they're hiring chefs and they're hiring waiters and they're hiring waitresses. They're hiring all the food prep, and that means they're responsible for buying the food per these restaurants. So that's in their budget to buy the food that's being cooked for the sailors and for active duty. So it's just there's so many components of it that is, traditional recreation, but then there's also all these other components that are just so unique that would pique people's interest if they knew about it. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping that this can be, that platform to bring more awareness to it, because if I didn't do my internship with it, I would not know any of it. I wouldn't know that, that they have movie theaters and golf courses and bowling alleys and all these things at their disposal that need staff to run them. And, you might think of traditional programs, but, there's family services and family childcare, that after school care and summer camp, just like we would in recreation centers. So it's absolutely incredible what they do on a day-to-day basis throughout the world in different countries everywhere.
And
Well
I
done.
remember people have talked about things about maybe tax-free living and some of the other stuff. There's perks. We didn't get to talk about any of it. Like if they're on a base or whatever. And so there's just some crazy things that it's so nuanced that we say it a lot, but could have gone a lot longer.
Yeah. Selfishly, and nobody's listening at this point anyway, so I'm going to say it anyway. They have Walt Disney World and Disneyland perks for that. I could only imagine, right, that there's that. So RecLess in Italy, if we're going to make it happen, you guys need to know a little bit. So va bene, I asked her about gelato. She said va bene, that's very well or good. And then she also said C when I asked if she knew some Italian. Do we know what C is?
Yes.
That is yes, correct. And she said un poco, a little Italian.
Little Italian.
So you've got a couple things that we can say when we're ready to go and take RecLess to Italy.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Good job,
guys.
man. Great. Group.
This was awesome. And that wraps up another episode. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
See you next time, everyone.
Follow RecLess Podcast on YouTube for more content and outtakes. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow along on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for news and exclusive clips. RecLess Podcast is edited and produced by Hannah Mize. Thanks for listening. See you next time.